You're watching India Revival Mission on Times Network. I'm Hina Gambhir. We are in the middle of coronavirus pandemic. Cases continue to rise and now we are reporting close to 1 lakh cases per day. But life has to go on. We have to live with coronavirus and it is forcing us to change our habits quite rapidly. The way we work, the way we shop, the way we use our banks, everything has changed. And today, that is the reason why we are discussing digital banking and cyber security. The government has been moving a cashless or a less cash economy, but are we ready? That's going to be the key focus over the next half an hour. Joining us on the broadcast is Anil Bhandari, CGM and CISO of the largest bank in the country, the State Bank of India. We have with us Pawan Duggal, a well-known cyber law expert. Shri Parthasarthi, Partner, National Leader, Cyber Risk Services, Deloitte India. We also have with us Mr. R. Chandrasekhar, former NASSCOM President and Chairman, Center for Digital Future. Welcome on this show, India Revival Mission, gentlemen. Let me begin this discussion with you, Mr. Bhandari. Pandemic, do you think has accelerated in a way digitization in the banking system? Because we were in any case moving towards digital banking.
That's absolutely correct. Even before the pandemic broke out, the concept of working from anywhere, working from home was a kind of a remote concept. People never thought of it that it would be possible to work from home. But after the pandemic broke out, there was actually no other option. So we were prepared for everything else. We were prepared for power outages, we were prepared for floods, we were prepared for, maybe terrorism-related attacks, all those kind of, we call it in our language, the disaster recovery and the business continuity plans were in place. But nobody thought about that you would reach a situation where all the offices of the bank would not be accessible. People would not be able to reach the office. So that kind of, accelerated the work from home. Now the situation is that in State Bank of India, we have almost close to now as we speak, we have about 10 to 12,000 people still working on working from their homes, working from anywhere on remote location on the VPN devices. So you're correct when you say that this has accelerated the digitization of the banking process here.
Okay, but Mr. Duggal, we know how in the banking industry, not just in India, but across the world, billions of rupees are transacted on a daily basis. And it is a veritable goldmine for cyber criminals as well.
Surely, this is one of the most fertile target areas for cyber criminals. And that's why the need for constantly updating and making secure the cyber security parameters of the banking ecosystem assume far more significance. But the fact remains is that by and large, there's a lot of gaps between what should be happening versus what exactly is happening. I was part of the G. Gopala Krishna working group of the Reserve Bank of India, and we had laid down almost a decade back the cyber security frameworks that had to be followed by the banks. Now, the RBI has notified that particular report, but we still find that there are gaps between what the banks should be doing versus what they are actually doing. And already now, with the Reserve Bank of India warning of a big cyber attack on the Indian banking ecosystem at a time when the Maharashtra Cyber Agency has said that on an average in every 5 days, they get more than 40,000 attacks on the banking sectors in Maharashtra alone. I believe the time has come for us to start giving far more significance to the importance of cybersecurity in the banking ecosystem. Cyber criminals are having an absolute field day. In fact, the coming of COVID-19 has heralded the golden age in cybercrime. Never ever in the history of the internet have we seen so massive growth in cybercrime at any previous point of time. So a majority of these cyber criminal activities today are being targeted to innocent users of the banking ecosystem, are increasingly relying upon phishing, identity thefts, and frauds for purposes of depriving people, and getting money back from banks becomes a nightmare. Despite the 6th July 2017 notification of the Reserve Bank of India mandating the banks to refund back the monies on account of transactions where the user has got no role. But by and large, it's a leaking ecosystem still. Much that we may like to give ourselves great amount of satisfaction that we are wonderful in security, I don't really think so. I think we are all waiting for the National Cyber Security Strategy that should give us more guidance. But India is lagging behind. India does not have a dedicated law on cybersecurity. Today, yes, the Information Technology Act mandates these banks to have in place reasonable security practices and procedures. But mind you, these ISO 27001 mandations were done way back in 2011. Right now, with now increased vectors of attack emerging from Internet of Things, from artificial intelligence, and from the blockchain ecosystem, I think we need to have a far more holistic approach. The problem for cyber criminals attacking the banking sector is immense. Our law has thoroughly failed us. We don't have an effective cybercrime law. The number of convictions in the country is less than 1%. So in a scenario like this, all efforts must be made in the direction of trying to make the banking ecosystem as secure as possible so that less and less people land up losing the monies from the said ecosystem.
Your view is a lot really needs to be done. Let's also take the opening comments from Mr. Parthasarathy. 50,000 cyber frauds, in fact, were reported in 2018 and 19. This is the RBI's data. With what Mr. Duggal has told us, we can only expect this number to be much higher for 2019-20 and thereafter.
Sure. I think when I look at it, since I work both with international banks and Indian banks, I'd like to essentially edge on the side of where I basically look at. I think the banking system, when you really look at it, there is a lot of catch up to be done. But when you really look at the maturity of some of the banks that we work with and the ones that basically a broader ecosystem, I think the banks are definitely pushing the envelope on a lot of things. Yes, there are emerging technologies that they're adopting from a digital perspective that happened even prior to COVID. But now with COVID, I think as people target not only the banks because of the work from home infrastructure, which had to be a rapid scaling and sort of exposure to the banks from that aspect, banks are looking into the risk exposure on those particular aspects. But overall, if you really look at it, I think there are a lot of things that need to be done. And that essentially, I think, has to be done collectively between the regulator, the banks, and public-private partnership. And I think what is also important is early warning systems that need to be established, like some of the other more mature markets. Because today, what happens is each bank is left to fend for themselves, and that is where the issue is. So from whether it's an individual or whether it's a bank, I think if the banks, they are going to operate individually, but while the criminals are very organized and operating very collectively, then I think we will not have that kind of a force to basically go after them. And which is where I think the banks which are doing a great job should come together in a sort of a consortium, which they have done in the past when they were trying to establish security operations center. I think a lot more of that kind of collective activity need to come and where they can basically thwart that. And coming to the statistics that you talked about, I definitely agree with Mr. Duggal that the peak in terms of cyber criminal activity has significantly increased. And that is not just because of the banking infrastructure. That is because of the emotional state of the user. So today, if somebody calls you saying that I have a COVID hotline or I have financial help for you or I am calling from the government and those kind of things, this is called what you call social engineering, preying on people who are already emotionally weak. And that essentially further increases it, because what happens is people are not going after the data center, they're going after the weakest link which is there in the environment.
Absolutely. Interesting viewpoint there. Mr. R. Chandrasekhar, what is your opinion? Do you think the situation is very bad, or do you think we are perhaps on the right track? I know we are not there. We need to make a stronger cyber defense system. But where are we right now in this fight?
I think there are a lot of steps that are needed. Much has been done, and for example, just as one small example which has helped to make transactions in the digital transactions, financial transactions, a little more secure in India. The two-factor authentication, for example, has significantly helped in bringing a measure of trust for people who are transacting digitally. Having said that, I think a number of steps were being taken progressively. What has changed, however, is that in the COVID times, not only are the people using the system transacting from remote locations, even inside employee organizations and people who have access to the internal and core systems are accessing them remotely. From a technology perspective, from an architectural perspective, this significantly increases the possibility of security breaches, and the vulnerabilities that were spoken about by the gentleman just a little while ago of people apply equally well to even employees of banks. So the difference is that the moment you are able to compromise an employee who has inside access to the system, then the order of magnitude of the threat increases enormously. This is, by the way, not only true of banking, it's also true in every other sector where remote location has now become the order of the day. People who have inside secure access to the organization systems, be they banks, be they service providers, be they any kind of organization, all of them are now working from home. The systems were not geared, and I must point this out, they were not geared to the bulk of the employees working remotely from a security point of view. Even from an infrastructure point of view, I think the limitations of our current infrastructure in India stand somewhat exposed when you look at the success of online classes. You look at a lot of healthcare services being provided online. There are huge gaps in terms of the availability of the infrastructure. Trust and reliability are the two most critical elements for any user, whether the person is an internal user or an external user. And I think ensuring these is a combination of technology, a combination of law and regulation, but equally importantly, it's also a question of following a process. A lot of these breaches happen because people don't follow the process. At the end of the day, they are human beings. Even people like us violate the normal instructions. Don't click on an unknown, don't respond to unknown mails, don't click on a link which is given, etc., etc. So I think all of these pieces will happen. It was happening and it is happening, but the accelerated pace of adoption, I think, has just raised the whole problem in order of magnitude. And let's not forget also some of the cyber challenges today, which are growing from state actors and also from people located in different countries. We are now witnessing massive attacks, and there have been warnings in Europe, for example, warning of heightened attacks on institutions. So both at an institutional and individual level, I think the threat has become extremely high.
Okay. Mr. Anil Bhandari, you heard the three panelists who are telling us about the big challenges that the banking system is going to face in the days to come. And very important point raised by Mr. R. Chandrasekhar that I want you to address, the issue of insider threats. I was just going through a report which says that 82% of financial organizations considered insiders with legitimate access as the main threat to cybersecurity. Now, most of the employees are working from home. Do you think this challenge has become even difficult to address?
So I agree with Mr. Chandrasekhar when he says that the insider threats are more, and in this remote working environment, the threats have increased. So what State Bank has done for the remote environment is that initially, when we started off, we were also kind of not very sure about how to go about it. When we started off, we allowed people to work on their own devices, which were not hardened devices. But subsequently, we moved on. We have hardened devices. We have a dual-factor authentication. In fact, we have a multi-factor authentication. People can log in only after, identify them through various means. And also, whatever activities they do, they are getting monitored. So monitored from productivity point of view and also from the security point of view, they're able to access only a certain amount of desktop in the banking environment, where we have placed our antivirus solutions, we have placed our endpoint detection and response systems. So all the activities are getting monitored. So while, when we started off, we were not very sure about how to tackle the security, but as we went along, we have hardened our devices, we have increased our security, And we are running periodic campaigns for our people so that to ensure that they don't fall prey to social engineering and phishing attacks.
Mr. Pawan Dugal, you heard a view from Mr. Anil Bhandari as well, the kind of steps State Bank of India, the biggest bank in the country, is taking. But then there are smaller banks as well. According to you, what should be the immediate priority? Morgan Stanley's report says that India's 670 million users of internet would rise to 914 million by 2027. So this number is only going to go up. What are the immediate challenges that need to be addressed, and how so?
Well, at a time when the world is expected to lose more than $6 trillion thanks to these cybersecurity breaches by the end of 2020, I think the time has come for the banks to immediately start addressing some fundamental issues. The first is the issue of constant updation of cybersecurity. Unfortunately, in a number of small banks, once a cybersecurity measure is done, it's mentally presumed to be secure for a lifetime. Whereas we have to understand that there's nothing known as absolute cybersecurity. So there's a need for far more sensitization amongst not just the CISO and the CIO levels, but also amongst the level of the normal employees of the banks. Primarily because banks are intermediaries under the Information Technology Act 2000. And I would expect more and more banks to be increasingly facing the legal heat in terms of being sued for their responsibilities or their inadequacies or neglect because of them not complying with the parameters of the Information Technology Act, especially Section 79 of the IT Act. Number two, I think we will have to start inculcating cybersecurity as a way of life. We cannot just say that, okay, the CIO or the CISO alone is responsible. The human link is the weakest link in the ecosystem of cybersecurity. And the more we focus on cyber security capacity building, that will be great. Number three, I think we have to quickly start now realizing the vector of attack which has increased thanks to the coming of COVID-19, where increasingly cyber criminals have started using artificial intelligence and the darknet to target banking networks and the monies of people. And the Jamtaras of the world are only complicating the scenario. It's not just a single Jamtara in India. Now, cybercrime has slowly converted itself into a cottage economy. Now, in a scenario like this, the time becomes even now more relevant that we should be effectively implementing the notification of the Reserve Bank of India of 6th of July 2017, which allows or which mandates banks to refund money for those transactions where the users do not have yet a role in the sale. I think we have to give some kind of an effective remedy to users, which they currently don't have. I lose some money, maybe 50,000 rupees, maybe 2 lakh rupees. And the next 8 months to 10 months, I'm running around the circle for banks for them to go ahead and refund the money.
But Mr. Parthasarathi, a couple of days ago, a colleague of mine in this organization, had lost around 30,000 because he received a call from an unknown number, and that person asked for the OTP. Now that, colleague of mine had no information. He wasn't really aware of something like a fraud of this sort could also happen. And then eventually he lost 30,000 rupees. So then, of course, we tried to help that person by telling that person about the rules and regulations that are in place, that the person has to immediately call the bank to be able to get that money back. So do you think, on one hand, while the banks, the government, strengthening the legal system, that has to happen, but at the same time, sensitization of the consumers, the people of this country, is the most important aspect in fighting this battle?
I think you stole some thoughts from my head. I think you read my mind, because I absolutely agree with you, because I think today, if you really talk to somebody about cybercrime and ask them, who do you call, right? I can guarantee, I think, at least 90% of the people even in this particular broadcast right now will possibly not know. But however, if you tell people, where do you call for COVID? If you really want to go for a COVID hotline, where do you basically call? Everybody will start knowing the number. Why is that? Because we have educated people. We've been fighting cybersecurity for the last 10, 15 years, but I think we have not really educated the masses.
And the masses are uneducated from that aspect. They don't know. Just like your colleague who did not know from an OTP perspective, he did not know where to report it. I will tell you, most educated people also do not know whether they have to go to a cyber crime cell, they need to call a hotline, they don't know that. So from that aspect, you're absolutely right. It's not just the strengthening the banks or strengthening our legal infrastructure. It's also an education of the people and what they need to do. Why is that important? Because when people report, it creates what you call as an early warning system to the law enforcement and to the forces to basically say, hey, these kind of attacks are happening, so that we essentially can do countermeasures or protect our particular environment from that aspect. But today, without that early warning system and people reporting in, or essentially having a consolidated view of basically looking at all of that particular data, I think we are today essentially extremely vulnerable. On one side, we have COVID virus. Other side, we have cyber criminals and cyber virus. But I think we are doing maybe a much better job on the COVID side. But on the cyber side, I do agree with Mr. Duggal that we need to do a lot more. And it is not just left to the banks or NASSCOM and others. I think it has to be collective, where all of us work together as citizens of this country to do something for it.
Okay. Mr. R. Chandrasekhar, what is your viewpoint? Whose responsibility should it really be to make the citizens, the people of this country, aware of this increase in cyber frauds? Is it the government's role, or is it the responsibility of the banks individually?
First is the awareness of the user, and clearly, expecting each bank to do it for their customers. Yes, they do need to use whatever channels are already established with their customers to reinforce them. I frequently get messages from my own bank saying, we never ask for OTP, we never ask for this, don't share, etc., etc. But maybe many people get them, but they ignore these messages. So one is the banks doing what they can at their level, but a larger awareness, I think, is certainly to some extent the government's responsibility. I'm aware, as a former Secretary IT, that the government had indeed formulated a larger awareness program. I don't think that ever got implemented. So you have to find out a way to actually make awareness a part of the whole commercial dynamic through which these transactions take place. The second part is, people being aware of what to do when things go wrong. The examples which were cited just now and your own colleague and so on. I think those people are not aware. Even those who are aware, the precautions that they need to take. But the reality is that since most of the systems are designed to strike a balance between convenience and security, and therefore consciously they are insecure to a certain extent, because if they were made very, very secure, it may become very inconvenient to use. Mobile payment system is an example of a very secure, and relatively secure system, which has used various factors to make transactions more secure. The third part is in the chain is, okay, fine, maybe I know the precautions. In spite of that, something has happened. I knew where to go. But then we come to the point which Mr. Duggal was talking about, which is then the banks take their own time. They have their own way of addressing this. And people who have small transactions, a few hundred rupees, a few thousand rupees, or maybe even tens of thousands of rupees, which for most people in the country is quite a large sum of money. Then they are running from pillar to post. Why can't all of this be covered through an insurance mechanism which is easy to use, immediate, where you get the amount within 2 or 3 days? If that guarantee is there, that will hugely increase the trust. The banks can cover themselves through insurance, and if a bank is running a very insecure system, their insurance premium will go up, forcing them to spend more money on security. So we have to find a way to pull money out of that system, rather than looking at a large budgetary allocation, which especially in today's financially constrained times for government is going to be extremely challenging.
So as the number of internet users in the country will rise, we are going to see a number of the number of hackers also increasing in our country, and hence a strong cyber defense system is something that's the need of the hour. Apart from this, making people of this country aware of these kind of frauds that are happening is also of prime importance. Thank you very much, Mr. R. Chandrasekhar, Shri Parthasarathy, Pawan Dugal and Anil Bhandari for joining us on this broadcast.